it feels almost overwhelming.
This is the tip of my pinky finger. This is
Oh,
where we
good.
are right now. We are at, if you could zoom in with a microscope to the like subatomic level, like that is how tiny a fraction of what has been published versus what has been done. People don't understand the every structure of American society, of American commerce, of American governance, of American civil society is wrapped up in this apparatus. And in order to understand why those institutional players made the moves they did, we need transparency at every level. And I can go through a million examples of this, but something as simple as the teachers' unions. When you see Randy Weingarten out there, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, 1.7 million teachers, one of the most influential nodes. They're a part of the National Education Association, the main super umbrella for every U.S. public school teachers union. Randy Weingarten comes out of this apparatus. She was on the board of the National Endowment for Democracy, the CIA cutout that we were talking about earlier. The teachers unions were given millions of dollars by the Central Intelligence Agency during the Cold War. Just straight cash, $1 million given to the National Education Association, which is not only still around, it's the biggest teachers union in the country. The CIA was giving them millions of dollars in the 1960s and 70s. What today is called Education International, at the time it was called the World Confederation of Organizations of the Teaching Profession, was given millions of dollars by the CIA. Everyone listening to me right now, you can go to Google, just google.com, type in NEA, CIA, $1 million cash payments, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. Education International is still around today, and it is campaigning in every country on planet Earth to eradicate and politically mobilize to stop whatever right-wing populist party is in power there. And some of these are left-wing populist governments, as I mentioned, in Venezuela. They'll campaign against Maduro. If Jeremy Corbyn had won the election in the UK for the prime ministership, if he wasn't ousted by Keir Starmer, they would have run this against the left-wing populist Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. And I know this because I've seen all these talks by all these NATO four-star general types and their State Department compatriots about what they were lining up against Corbyn. But the fact is any populist movement, the teachers' unions that's not just an international thing.
You can see this on your screen, by the way, right now.
Yeah,
if you're watching this, this is an article from the Akron Beacon, 1967. CIA piped $1 million to two teachers' groups.
So when you see the teachers' unions, they were going, now the purpose of that money, and that was just a little bit of it, the purpose of that money was to help the capacity build the teachers' unions, to make them stronger and more powerful and could hire more people and could have a bigger propaganda engine, in order to influence curricula, in order to influence the ministries of education in foreign countries, and influence the mythology to rid the culture, the culture understood by the kids from any Soviet Union affinity. It was done in the Cold War ostensibly to help win the Cold War. And today you see this same USAID State Department funding to these very groups. One of the groups mentioned there is today's Education International. I think we've given $1 billion to Education International over the past decade through the State Department and USAID. And Education International successfully campaigned to get the AfD. If you're a member of the AfD party in Germany, Education International mobilized to make sure that nobody affiliated with AfD can be a part of these teachers' unions in Germany, can have representation in the schools. They did the same thing to Bolsonaro in Brazil, the Education International. They're doing the same thing in Spain. They're doing the same thing in Italy. It's literally the same playbook, the same players for the same reason, except they didn't tell us this time. And part of the issue is nobody in the MAGA movement we did not inherit in a movement that had any real care at all about foreign policy in these international networks. The MAGA movement, in terms of the voting base, came from people who were sick of high crime, were sick of failing public schools, who were sick of, government corruption from what they saw, and had no professional expertise in the global view of the American empire. And so in Trump 1, there was no attention to this at all from the White House. There was no attention to this at all from the State Department. USAID was completely rogue under Trump 1. And what we need now is a full declassification of all of this. And that will send an incredibly powerful message to whoever inherits these agencies next that we see you. You try to do this again, you're going to be on a Times Square jumbotron with your emails, your communications, your internal analysis memos, your decision memos. And I believe you mentioned Hungary. Imagine if the USAID Hungary files get produced. Samantha Power went full regime change against Orban, funding Hungarian media, Hungarian political organizations, Hungarian rule of law programs to influence the courts. All the way Hungarian student groups and activist groups and university centers. I want every single file to be declassified to the extent it's classified, to be published to the extent it's SBU sensitive but unclassified, and because no one consented to that, no one voted for that. And if you're going to do something like that, overturn a democratically elected government in a foreign country, you need a damn good reason, not just because it helps a bunch of your political insider cronies make money off of markets in the region. And that's the way we've conducted statecraft with this, because these networks, they're an easy button. They're all preset, good to go. It's the same networks every time. You're going to have the National Endowment for Democracy. You're going to have the Ford Foundation. You're going to have the Carnegie Foundation. You're going to have the Wilson Center. It's the same thing in every country. You're going to have the open society groups. You're going to have their friends in the university centers. You're going to have the international branch of the AFL-CIO in that local country. It's so predictable every time. And a lot of this just relies on secrecy, because they say anything that has to do with foreign policy, it impacts America on the world stage, and so therefore it's classified. So therefore you can't FOIA it. Therefore you get no transparency about what we do in international relations. And then these networks come home. Every single one of these groups is active at home. The Ford Foundation is active at home. The Open Society Foundation is active at home. And so while they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars in government subsidies for international affairs work, they've now hired tens of thousands of people to be able to play around and engage in all sorts of domestic operations to destabilize this one, the same way they're paid to do by our government to do abroad.